זיכרונות כספר יומם חרוט על לוח ליל סותר הזמן זורק את הרעות כאפר אבל הטוב לעד לא יימחק על כן אלה לאור הזיכרונות על כן אבי נתיב חיי נעלות כי יש דממה בתום השערות יש אור גנוז באושר שנגור כי יש דממה בתום השערות יש אור גנוז באושר וגם אותך אשר אותי אהבת אזכור תמיד בהיר וחייכני ולא תדע כמה לי הכאבת כי עד היום תשכון בלבבי על כן אלה לאור הזיכרונות על כן אבי נתיב חיי נעלות כי יש דממה בתום השערות יש אור גנוז באושר שנגור כי יש דממה בתום השערות יש אור גנוז באושר שנגור
Tonight, biography brings you a warrior's story, the man who became the living image of a young nation, General Moshe Dayan.
June 1967, the Six-Day War. Like David slaying Goliath, the vastly outnumbered Israeli armed forces crush Arab military might. It is one of the swiftest and most decisive victories in history. The brilliant warrior who launched this masterstroke was Moshe Dayan. The man in the black eye patch would become a legend in his own lifetime. A bold soldier, fearless in battle.
I don't know anything which is more exciting than war. Not that I recommend to make war just to get excitement. But really, when you think about life, what could be more exciting?
Moshe Dayan was loved by the Israeli people, hailed by the world as a hero. But he was also the target of bitter criticism. This charismatic military genius fought war and lived life by his own dangerous rules. The remarkable life of Moshe Dayan is a story of courage and controversy. It is a story of the struggle of a young nation to survive and of a man who embodied the heroic spirit of Israel itself. In the 2,000 years since biblical times, the land known as Palestine would become a battleground for Christian, Muslim, and Jew, swept by the shifting sands of religious conflict and conquest. Beginning in the late 19th century, European Jews emigrated to Palestine, drawn by an age-old dream to settle in the biblical homeland they called Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. On the desolate shores of the Sea of Galilee, these settlers built Degania, the first kibbutz. Among the settlers were two Russian immigrants, Devorah and Shmuel Dayan. In 1915, they had a son and named him Moshe. He would be the first child born on Israel's first kibbutz. It was as if Dayan had been marked by destiny from birth.
I was born here in Degania at the Sea of Galilee. And the people around me were the real pioneers. None of them really worried about his personal welfare. They all were concerned with the Jewish people, and not at the present, but in the future. What will happen with the Jewish people in the future?
Dayan and the other children of the kibbutz who would build that future often played with Arab children. Though life was harsh, this sun-scorched land was home. When Moshe was 6, his family moved to build a new collective farm settlement at Nahalal in the valley of Jezreel. Schooled in the Bible, Dayan's imagination was fired by tales of ancient Jewish warriors like David and Joshua. As the Jewish settlers reaped their first harvests, the Arabs viewed them as intruders, a threat to their age-old way of life. The Arabs often targeted Jews with violence. Moshe Dayan's family lived under the constant threat of attack. Working on his parents' Nahalal farm, Moshe Dayan would be forced to come of age swiftly. At 14, he was initiated into the Haganah, the Jews' self-defense force. In the Haganah, Dayan was introduced to armed conflict on its most basic terms, as a sentinel defending his family and his home. But as he grew up and Arab attacks increased, Moshe Dayan would be drawn to the struggle. To help keep the peace, the British, who had governed Palestine since World War I, created a Jewish settlement police force. In 1937, at the age of 22, Moshe Dayan would enlist. He was quickly promoted to the rank of sergeant. But Dayan was leading a double life, for he still belonged to the Haganah, which the British had outlawed as a challenge to their authority. Dayan was secretly using British weapons to train Haganah fighters, then leading them on raids against Arab marauders. In the Haganah, Moshe Dayan would become skilled in the tactics of commando warfare, maneuvers based on stealth, deception, and surprise. Though serving with the British, the headstrong Dayan at first scorned their spit and polish discipline. Yet soon he would be strongly influenced by a brilliant British officer, Captain Ord Wingate. On a night raid with Wingate, Dayan would learn valuable lessons in combat.
To start with, I went in front of him as a scout, ahead of the group. And he was not very satisfied with the way that I did it. And I thought that I was a first-class soldier, but it wasn't good enough for him, for Wingate. So he said that he would go ahead. And I thought, now we would be in trouble because he won't even find a way. And believe me, I really couldn't believe it. He really picked the best way. Never been there before. In an area that I was born and grown in, and I had a lesson to learn from him.
Dayan would soon have other lessons to learn. In 1939, the British discovered his secret membership in the outlawed Haganah. He was arrested. The charge? Illegal possession of firearms. The harsh sentence? 10 years in heavily guarded Accra prison. The severe prison conditions would have broken a less resilient spirit, but Dayan viewed his confinement as a challenge. To have never experienced imprisonment, he wrote, meant only living half a life. Then, unexpectedly, after he had served 16 months, fate would intervene to free him. In 1940, Hitler's forces invaded North Africa. Attacking in a pincer movement with pro-Nazi Vichy French forces in Syria, they advanced relentlessly towards Palestine. British troops were hard-pressed to resist the Nazi onslaught. Suddenly, Moshe Dayan and the other Haganah fighters were more useful to the British in combat than behind bars. At 25, Dayan would join British forces in the Allied invasion of Syria. By June 1941, Dayan was fighting the Vichy French.
In the morning, we were discovered by the French. And the only way really to hold on was to take over the main building where the French were there and to hold it until the British come. And I thought that I could do it with hand grenades only, and to manage to throw a hand grenade into the window. And then when I do that, then the rest of the unit, some 20 men or so, would rush and take over. Then we can hold on in that building. And I remember those 30 yards that I had to cover. And I threw the first hand grenade. I aimed to the window, but I missed. But luckily, it silenced the machine gun there. So I jumped the rest of the way and threw the second one, and that time right into the window. And then everybody rushed in, and we did take the building. And that's what really decided that battle.
That day, while looking through binoculars, Dayan was struck by a sniper's bullet. Shattered glass tore into his left eye. The loss of his eye would plunge Dayan into deep despair. A man of action, he would spend the rest of World War II on the sidelines. After months of recuperation, Dayan was forced to wear an eye patch, which he hated. It seemed that his days in combat were over. This time of trial for Moshe Dayan was also an anguished period for Palestine. In 1945, when the war in Europe finally ended, thousands of Jewish refugees flooded into the already troubled land. Arab resentment against the surge of Jewish immigration exploded into violence. The leader of the Jews in Palestine was David Ben-Gurion, the visionary who guided the Zionist movement to found a Jewish state. But other Jewish groups, like the Stern and Irgun, spoke in an angrier voice and used more violent tactics. Menachem Begin, a Polish immigrant, led the Irgun in a campaign to force a British withdrawal from Palestine. The violence reached its climax in July 1946 at the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. In the explosion set by Begin's followers, 91 English, Arabs, and Jews died. And out of the carnage, the flames of hatred and mistrust flared higher. Tension in Palestine mounted, threatening to erupt into armed conflict between Arab and Jew. Active in the struggle, Dayan followed the leadership of David Ben-Gurion.
I admired in Ben-Gurion, most of all, his ability to stand up against everybody if he thought that his way was right. Then he fought for it and went all the way and through very difficult times.